morning, everybody. I'm Louise Nicholls. The first slide starts by showing VUCA. And as we've gone round the world giving our latest round of supplier conferences, we've been talking about VUCA. And I'm sure most people are very familiar with it. It's that we are operating in a volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world. And what we're trying to do is to get our supply chain to think about the fact that we're living in a much more rapidly changing world. And it's going to be about building the capability and capacity for them to adapt more rapidly. So what do we mean by VUCA? And let's bring it to life a little bit. So if we take the subject of food waste, really interesting subject. It's the subject that our customers tell us that they're most concerned about, that Marks & Spencer's does something about. And I think for a lot of people, when we think about food waste, we think about the economic consequences. You know, why on earth would we waste so much? You know, how do we make sure that we become a business that wastes nothing? But we also think about the environmental consequences. If we think about waste, if it was a country, it'd be the third largest country in terms of CO2 emissions. So environmentally, we need to do something about it. And if we're really honest, the food waste conversation largely focused on thinking about the environmental element. But increasingly, we're seeing that it's about the social consequences of food waste. The best anaerobic digester is the human stomach, and we start to see that come through in legislation. For example, France, in terms of everything that can be redistributed should be redistributed. We're also seeing a real rise in that social agenda, so not just in the food waste element. You know, we've got rapid migration happening, we've got rising inequality, we're starting to, well, we've just heard Dante talking about human rights, global goals. We start to see that come through in legislation, the Modern Slavery Act, in the UK, the National Living Wage. Again, really starting to see a change in the agenda. We're also in a period of rapid era of transparency. You know, Rana Plaza, terrible tragedy. It was on YouTube in 7 minutes. The kind of time where you could have a day or two to think about what your press response was going to be to an issue has long gone. We're expected to know that answer pretty immediately. And I think it's really interesting. Everywhere I go around in the world, people talk about the fact they've got Facebook pages, that anyone, anywhere can start a campaign. So we've got to be much more connected. And I think Dante's point about, we've got to be up for talking about the fact issues do exist in our supply chain, and it's what we're doing about them. I think the other really interesting element is that, years ago, my team would get lots of questionnaires to fill in as the way that we would be ranked in different surveys. Now, increasingly, it's about what is available on our website, what's publicly disclosed. So again, we're going to have to put more into the public domain to talk about what we're up to. So we're in this area of VUCA. And really what we're looking at here is how do we build capability and capacity in our supply chain to be able to respond to this and to seize the opportunities. So what's Marks & Spencer's been doing? Well, we've been on a journey to embed sustainability, human rights into our business. And actually, I've been busy writing our human rights report. And it's interesting to go back to the very, very origins of Marks & Spencer. And many of the things that we're talking about today were part of what our founding members were thinking about at the time. Back in 2007, we launched something called Plan A. This was our eco-ethical plan that was to become, our wish to become a really sustainable business. Now, we produced that. It had 100 commitments, and they were really good if you were very technical and you understood all these big issues. But they were really difficult for our employees, our customers, our suppliers to be able to participate. And so what we've been on a journey to do is to simplify it, make it easier for people to participate. And that's really important because the only way we're going to make this work is if we make a change happen across all our products, across all our suppliers, and we do it in a way that enables our customers and our employees to participate. So back in 2014, what did we do? We did a number of things in the latest iteration of the strategy. The first one was to actually link for people the brand values that we had to Plan A, to make it easier for people to see how the brand and the values that we were measuring people in terms of their business objectives linked together. So we did those around defining them as inspiration, in touch, integrity, and innovation, and then putting underneath what were the things that we were going to do as our sustainability strategy to enable the business to drive much faster at becoming a sustainable business. And really these are about making it easier for people to participate, and it's about putting a bit more oomph into the engine room. So let me bring to life a few of the things we did to simplify it and make it easier for people to participate. The first one was, we all understand life cycle analysis, we all understand material hotspots, but again, it's really complex, people can't really get their head around it. So what we've done is we've defined sustainable attributes for each different product area, and we've linked them to business objectives. So buyers are incentivized to buy more products with sustainability attributes. What we've done over the last year is that we've worked out roadmaps with every single business area so that they can understand what are the real material hotspots that are relevant to their business area and that they will drive them to ensuring that every product has a sustainable attribute by 2020. So we've made it really simple. Now some of those are about taking recycled material, brought back clothes and making them into sustainable suits. The one at the bottom, the beauty product, was about taking what was seen as a waste material, grapes that were produced from English wine, and actually making them a resource that we then use to make a beauty product. So again, helping people to see that circular economy and bringing it to use. But lots of them are about embedding the things that we know are really important, really getting after those big environmental and social hotspots, often associated with raw materials, often linked to human rights. So again, making it really easy for people to see how the things link together. So back in 2010, we were starting to have a conversation about audit and the role of audit. So every product supplier for Marks and Spencer's has to have an ethical audit, and then depending on where that product is, will depend on whether or not it then also needs a quality audit, an integrity audit. If it's a very specific sector, it might need a dye house audit, or it might need an animal welfare audit. So audit is part of doing business with Marks and Spencer's. But what we know is that audit doesn't conjure up accountability into the supply chain. And what we wanted to do was to change the conversation. We had recognised there was a business benefit for us in getting after sustainability. How did we help the supply chain to realise that business benefit too? So one of the things that we did was we aligned our scorecard process. We already had a scorecard for commercial and for technical and for product development. We introduced a sustainability scorecard, and that had three underpinning elements: an environmental framework, a lean framework, and an ethical framework. And these were all about taking businesses on a step journey that took them from a compliance-based approach to embedding this so that they would become leaders in sustainability in their own right. So why were we doing this? We knew legislation was coming. We could see rising input prices. We could see the real challenges around accessing skilled labour. So when we wanted to prove to people that there was a real business case in them doing it for themselves, because there's no way we're going to risk management from sitting in Marks and Spencer's. We need every supplier to be enabled to risk manage too. And the other thing we wanted to prove is that Marks and Spencer's would reward businesses that embedded sustainability in the heart of how they do business. So fast forward 6 years, 92% of suppliers involved, 48% of suppliers are now demonstrating that they have really embedded sustainability at the heart of their business, and 11% of them are showing real leadership that Marks and Spencer's can learn from. So let me explain a little bit more about what are we seeing as some of those benefits. So in terms of from an ethical point of view, these are sites that now have their own people strategy. They've got comprehensive HR teams. They've got mature industrial relations. They've got comprehensive training matrices. They're actually they're using staff survey as a way of enabling them to really make sure they've understood what matters to workers. And we're starting to see the rise in worker satisfaction increasing. So 75% of sites' latest staff survey score showed a satisfaction of more than 65%, which is quite high for some of these industries. From an environmental perspective, again, we're starting to see those metrics track up. So last year, the amount of sites that sent zero waste to landfill was 48%. This year it's 60%. And what's really important here is that before, what we were seeing is more sites going to zero waste to landfill, but their amount of waste per tonne of finished product was still going up. What we're now starting to see is an increasing number of those sites recognising they need to drive that metric down, and again around energy and water usage. And what we're seeing from a lean perspective, this is not about having a few senior managers who understand productivity. This is about embedding it all the way down to the shop floor. What we're seeing is 4 times the level of problem solving. So they're much more able to adapt in a VUCA world. And typically we're seeing somewhere between 10 and 35% improvement in productivity. And what's really important is Marks and Spencer rewarding them with more business. Yes, they're going 20% faster than the average Marks and Spencer supplier. We've also been really focused on relentlessly driving after natural resource efficiency. And that's about changing some of the business models. So back in 2011, we looked at hangers, and we said, we give away a hanger every time someone comes in to buy something in our store. Why don't we just ask the question of customers, do you actually need that hanger? That led to a significant reduction in the usage of hangers, and we also linked it to UNICEF. So for every box of hangers that we recycled, they received 57p, and that's now generated over £500,000 for UNICEF to be able to invest back in water and sanitation projects in Bangladesh, one of our key textile sourcing countries. Similarly with swapping, 1 billion items of clothing go into landfill every year in the UK alone. This was about how do we change the model? How do we encourage people to think, when I buy, why don't I bring back some old clothing that I'm not using? And then some of that clothing can be either resold or it can go into being recycled into yarns that can be used to produce more clothes. So changing that business model. On something like food redistribution, we tried various models with food redistribution. We'd come up against the challenge that every individual store, it was dependent on the local person. It was very difficult to make sure that they met the kind of food safety legislation, and that we didn't find food reappeared on market stalls. So what we did 18 months ago is we said, come on, technology must be able to help us. And we engaged with an organisation called Neighbourly, who took away all the challenge for stores of being able to find a charity partner, being able to meet the legislative requirement. So we made it really easy and simple for them to do business. And what we've ended up with is a much faster scale rollout nationwide and an engagement with the local community that we just didn't have before. Packaging, I now look after the packaging team. Why? Because it's not about reducing the weight of packaging. Yes, that's part of it, but it's about recognising the role and the function of packaging right up front in the design process. This is about recognising its role is to protect the product and to extend product life. So that we need to be thinking about it much earlier in the process, not at the very end. Stores, we've obviously had a plan that's been about reducing energy and reducing water, but actually stores are about theatre. They're about being able to tell some of the sustainability story, putting the living wall outside, using rainwater harvested water in our toilets. It starts to tell the story for customers to enable them to participate. Water, I think, is a really interesting element because water is about recognising, initially it was about efficiency, increasingly it's about working at a catchment level around water stewardship. But the really interesting bit for me is it's the really great example of the nexus between human rights and doing the right thing in terms of stewardship for the environment. The other thing that we did in 2014 is that we brought together the many disparate programmes we had going on for the community across where we source and where we operate. And the purpose behind this was to bring it together and be really clear. Why do we run community programmes? We run them to drive greater resilience into those communities. So let's be really clear about the frameworks and the metrics that we use to measure impact and bring them all together under 3 buckets, looking at environment, looking at well-being, and looking at livelihoods, and be much clearer about it. Why are we doing this? Well, this is again, goes back to the VUCA world. What we've got at the moment is we've got fragile supply chains. We've got real challenges around protecting those natural resources, about finding those kind of skilled workers. We're increasingly seeing that workers are coming from more vulnerable communities, with real issues around sanitation, around security. So how do we change that? And that's about building capability and capacity in our suppliers and in the communities in which they operate to create much more resilient supply chains. So Spark Something Good was about how do we help customers and employees to participate. Again, let's make it simple. Let's make it really easy for them to participate. So again, what we've done here is that we've introduced a loyalty card called Sparks, where customers can for every percentage they buy with Marks and Spencer's, they choose a charity that also benefits from their purchases. And we've then formed across the UK. We've picked locations in the UK where we're running Spark Something Good. So over a week, 24 charities, we engage a whole series of volunteers in making a difference. And we've made it possible for both our customers to join in, our employees to join in, our suppliers. And that's starting to generate better connections in the locality. And again, what's this about? It's about building resilient communities, and it's about helping our customers to participate in things that matter to them. So there's a really strong business case for doing this. We thought when we started this that it would cost our business 40 million. We've been able to very clearly prove year on year there's a very clear business case to sustainability. And what I've been saying is that we've been trying very hard to prove that for our suppliers too. There's a really clear business case for them to engage in it too. Let's make it easy for them to get on the road, because if they become advocates for sustainability, they can start engaging their suppliers and being advocates for it too. Collaboration. We've already heard about collaboration. It's the key theme of this conference, and I think collaboration is absolutely key. I was part of founding SEDEX. I'm really delighted that SEDEX and BSCI have linked together to form this collaboration. I think it's vital. We've got to stop competing, we've got to stop talking, and we've got to really get after some action. And so anything to do that has got to be a good thing. But the reality is, no matter what we are as individual businesses, we're pretty small. We need to work together to really leverage things. So what's the next steps for Marks and Spencer's? Well, what you'll see next week is the launch of our latest sustainability report and our first human rights report, and our modern slavery statement. You'll also see that we're increasing the amount of transparency that's on our supply chain, on our website, that's really starting to give you more information about our supply chain and some of these issues. We're ready to enter that VUCA world. We're a little bit nervous about it, which I think Dante alluded to. This is a different era, but it's an era that we're recognising we need to enter, and we need to help our supply chain to enter it too. Thank you.